long before the concept of hell was ever written into religious doctrine, before demons were given horns, fire, and kingdoms beneath the earth. Humanity already feared one name, Pazuzu. His story begins more than 3,000 years ago. Carved into stone tablets beneath the scorching sun of ancient Mesopotamia, this was a time when disease had no cure, when famine could erase entire cities, and when the wind itself was believed to carry death. And within those winds, they believed Pazuzu traveled. Pazuzu was not merely a demon, he was a force, a supernatural embodiment of plague, drought, locust swarms, and most disturbingly madness. Ancient depictions describe him as a grotesque hybrid, the emaciated body of a man, the talons of a bird of prey, the tail of a scorpion curled and ready to strike, his face of a canine, stretched and twisted into an eternal expression of hunger and rage, and from his back, two massive wings, forever frozen as if mid-descent. But the true horror of Pazuzu was never his appearance, it was what he did to the human mind. Unlike many demons who demanded worship, Pazuzu was feared even by those who believed in him. Mothers hung small statues of him around their children's necks, not to honor him, but to appease him. They believed that invoking Pazuzu's name could ward off worse evils, particularly a demoness named Lamashtu who preyed on infants and pregnant women. Think about that for a moment. A demon so terrifying that people prayed to him for protection. This paradox made Pazuzu unique. He existed in the gray space between savior and destroyer, an ancient warning that evil could sometimes masquerade as necessity. Mesopotamian texts describe sudden outbreaks of irrational behavior sweeping through villages, people screaming at unseen figures, children laughing uncontrollably before collapsing into silence, entire families turning on one another without explanation. The priests had a name for these events, the breath of Pazuzu. They believed he traveled on the desert wind, slipping into homes through cracks, doorways, and dreams. What made Pazuzu especially feared was his patience. He did not possess violently, he waited. Victims were said to experience subtle symptoms at first: nightmares, a sense of being watched, whispers that stopped the moment they tried to focus. Over time, these whispers grew louder. They spoke in familiar voices, voices of loved ones, voices that urged paranoia, mistrust, isolation. Ancient healers described victims clawing symbols into walls they had never learned, symbols that matched inscriptions found hundreds of miles away, carved centuries earlier. How could someone draw what they had never seen? Pazuzu, they believed, did not enter the body. He inhabited the thoughts. What is most unsettling is that Pazuzu never vanished with ancient history. In the modern era, his name resurfaced not in mythology, but in exorcism case files. Priests conducting exorcisms in the 20th century reported something disturbing. Certain possessed individuals spoke Akkadian, a dead language not spoken for over 2,000 years. Some identified themselves not as Pazuzu but as his servants. They described him as the watcher on the wind, the one who waits above, the hunger that never sleeps. In several cases, victims displayed extreme aversion to open windows, insisting that something was waiting outside. One case file describes a man who became obsessed with ancient Mesopotamian artifacts, despite having no prior interest in history. He drew Pazuzu repeatedly, always with the same detail, always with the same phrase written beneath the image. He comes when the wind changes. The man later claimed he could feel something perched above him when he slept, breathing, waiting. Psychological explanations were offered: stress, delusion, mass hysteria, and yet, the descriptions never changed. Across centuries, across cultures, across belief systems, ancient texts warned that Pazuzu is drawn to emotional instability, grief, fear, desperation. He does not create suffering, he feeds on it. And once he has taken hold, he does not rush. He allows the mind to unravel slowly, so the victim never realizes when they stopped being themselves. Some scholars believe Pazuzu represents humanity's oldest understanding of mental illness. Others insist that explanation is too convenient, too safe, because Pazuzu was never blamed for sadness alone. He was blamed for shared madness. Entire groups collapsing into fear at once, entire regions abandoning their homes overnight. Even today, certain desert communities in the Middle East still refuse to speak his name aloud when the wind howls at night. Perhaps the most chilling detail is that Pazuzu is not described as roaming endlessly. He is described as watching, waiting for the moment when humanity forgets ancient warnings, when belief fades, when doors are left open, both physical and mental. Because according to the oldest inscriptions ever discovered, Pazuzu does not need to be summoned. He arrives when invited. And if you ever feel the wind change suddenly, if whispers ride the silence, or shadows seem to move just beyond sight, the ancients would tell you this: Do not look up, do not listen, and whatever you do not speak his name. Before there was a devil, there was light, not fire, not flame, but a brilliance so pure, it was said to illuminate the edges of creation itself. His name was Lucifer, the light-bringer, the morning star, the most radiant of all beings ever created. Ancient texts do not describe Lucifer as a monster, they describe him as perfect, crafted not only with immense power, but with intelligence, beauty, and awareness far beyond that of humanity. He was not merely an angel, he was a standard, the measure by which all others were judged, and that is where the story truly becomes dangerous. According to ancient theological writings, Lucifer was placed above all other angels. He was said to walk among the choirs of heaven, bearing knowledge that few others could comprehend. He understood creation, he understood free will, and most importantly, he understood himself. Where other angels existed to serve, Lucifer questioned. And the most terrifying idea ever to enter heaven was born. What if obedience was not virtue, but limitation? Scripture suggests Lucifer did not rebel out of hatred, he rebelled out of conviction. He believed that beings gifted with awareness should not kneel blindly, that free will was meaningless without freedom from authority. In other words, Lucifer believed he was right. The war in heaven, as it is later described, was not a battle of swords and fire. It was a war of ideology, loyalty versus autonomy, order versus self-determination. And when Lucifer refused to bow, heaven did something it had never done before. It rejected perfection. In a moment described as both instantaneous and eternal, Lucifer was cast down, torn from the light that defined him, stripped of divine harmony, condemned to fall endlessly through darkness. Ancient texts say the fall did not destroy Lucifer, it changed him. Where once there was radiance, now there was reflection. Lucifer retained his intelligence, retained his memory, retained his understanding of heaven, and that knowledge became his greatest weapon. Hell, in its earliest descriptions, was not a kingdom, it was a wounded place shaped by exile, resentment, and loss. And Lucifer became its architect. But here is where the story grows far more unsettling. Lucifer does not rule hell through force. He rules through invitation. Unlike other demons who torment and terrorize, Lucifer persuades. He studies humanity with surgical precision. He observes desire, fear, shame, and then he speaks. Not with threats, not with commands, but with understanding. Ancient demonological texts warn that Lucifer never lies outright. He simply reframes truth. He tells humans they are capable of more, that rules are chains, that guilt is a weapon used by the powerful to control the weak. And worst of all, he makes sense. This is why Lucifer is considered the most dangerous of all demons. He does not corrupt through violence, he corrupts through choice. Occult practitioners throughout history have claimed encounters with Lucifer that were disturbingly calm. No screaming, no flames, no horror, only conversation. He appears, they say, as a refined presence, sometimes beautiful, sometimes in distinct ways composed. He listens, and when he speaks, it is never about sin. It is about potential. Medieval grimoires describe Lucifer as the bearer of enlightenment, a title that terrified the church, because enlightenment does not feel evil. It feels empowering. Followers of Luciferian philosophy often insist they do not worship him, they align with him. They view Lucifer not as a demon, but as a liberator, one who exposed the cruelty of blind obedience. But history records a far darker pattern. Those who pursue Lucifer's path often become isolated, detached, morally untethered. They lose the ability to feel guilt or empathy. And when that happens, the fall begins again. Exorcists claim Lucifer rarely possesses directly. He prefers influence, whispering doubts, encouraging rebellion for its own sake, convincing people that destruction is justified if it feels righteous. In this way, Lucifer does not need to claim souls. Humans deliver themselves, every act of cruelty justified as truth, every betrayal excused as freedom, every sin reframed as self-expression. Lucifer does not ask for worship, he asks for agreement. Some theologians believe Lucifer still believes he will win, that one day humanity will abandon obedience entirely, that heaven will stand empty, and free will reign without consequence. Whether that is prophecy or delusion remains unknown. But one truth remains constant across every text. Lucifer does not hate humanity, he envies it. Humans were given what he lost, the freedom to choose, without remembering what was lost before the fall. Lucifer is not the demon who drags souls screaming into fire. He is the one who walks beside you, asking questions you are afraid to answer. He is the doubt that feels intelligent, the rebellion that feels justified, the choice that feels entirely your own. And that is why his fall is the most dangerous story ever told. Because if Lucifer was wrong, then so are all who follow him. And if he was right, then heaven may have never been safe at all. Have you ever seen this image? A goat-headed figure with wings, a torch between its horns, and both male and female features. This is Baphomet, one of the most misunderstood and controversial symbols in history. But where did this figure actually come from? Is it an ancient demon, a symbol of evil, or something else entirely? Today, we're diving deep into the bizarre and fascinating story of Baphomet, from medieval knights to modern occultism. Get ready, because this is a wild ride. The story starts in the early 14th century, with the Knights Templar. You've probably heard of them, the famous crusading warrior monks. They were powerful, wealthy, and respected throughout Europe. But on Friday, October 13, 1307, everything changed. King Philip IV of France, who was deeply in debt to the Templars, ordered a mass arrest of all the knights in his kingdom. The charges were shocking: heresy, spitting on the cross, and worshipping a mysterious idol head called Baphomet. So, what exactly did the Templars say about Baphomet during their interrogations? Well, their confessions, which were often extracted under extreme torture, were all over the place. Some knights described a severed head, others a wooden carving, and some even a cat or a multi-faced figure. Some said it gave them wealth and made the land fertile, while others said they were taught to worship it as their god and savior. The name Baphomet itself was a puzzle. No one had ever heard it before. Scholars have since come up with theories. One popular idea is that Baphomet was a French mispronunciation of Muhammad or Muhammad. The Templars were accused of secretly converting to Islam during their time in the East. Another theory suggests it's a code, perhaps connected to Greek words meaning absorption of knowledge or related to Gnostic wisdom. The problem is, there's no real evidence to support any of this. No Baphomet idol was ever found in any Templar preceptory. Most historians today believe the charges were fabricated by King Philip to seize the Templars' wealth and eliminate them as a political and financial rival. The Baphomet accusation was simply a convenient and sensational way to turn public opinion against them and get the Pope's approval. The Templars were disbanded, their leader Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake, and the legend of their secret heretical worship was born. For centuries, Baphomet was nothing more than a historical footnote, a mysterious name tied to a medieval conspiracy. Then, in the 19th century, everything changed. The age of occult revival was in full swing in Europe. People were fascinated by secret societies, ancient magic, and hidden knowledge. And a French ceremonial magician named Levi was about to resurrect Baphomet and give him a whole new life. In Lo, Levi published his famous book, Transcendental Magic, its doctrine and ritual, and in it, he included a drawing that would become iconic, the Baphomet of Mendes. This is the image we all know today. The goat-headed androgynous figure with wings, seated on a cube, with a pentagram on its forehead, and a torch of intelligence burning between its horns. One hand points up to a white moon, the other points down to a black moon. On its arms are the Latin words solve and coagula, meaning dissolve and coagulate. So, was Levi revealing an ancient demon? Not at all. Levi himself explained that his Baphomet was not a figure of evil. It was a symbol, a complex allegory representing the sum total of the universe, the balance of all opposites. Let's break it down. The goat head represents the material world and our animalistic nature. The torch is the light of universal intelligence and spiritual enlightenment. The male and female features, along with the two moons, symbolize the dualistic nature of reality, good and evil, mercy and justice, male and female. The phrase solve et coagula is an alchemical maxim representing the process of breaking things down and putting them back together to create something new and perfected. It's about transformation. So, Levi's Baphomet wasn't a devil to be worshipped. It was a philosophical diagram, a symbol of esoteric balance and the great magical agent, or the universal life force. He actually created it to represent what he believed the Templars should have been worshipping if they were true initiates of ancient wisdom. Not what they actually worshipped, but the image was powerful. Too powerful. Perhaps its resemblance to traditional depictions of the devil was undeniable, and people began to associate Levi's symbol of balance with pure evil. The connection between Baphomet and Satanism was solidified later in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Anti-Masonic writers, like the infamous Leo Taxil, used Levi's image to prove that Freemasons were devil worshippers. Taxil's elaborate hoax, which he later publicly admitted was a complete fabrication, claimed that Masons worshipped Baphomet in their secret rites. Despite the confession, the damage was done. The idea of Baphomet as the idol of secret devil-worshipping societies was firmly planted in the public imagination. Then, in the 1960s, a new kind of Satanism emerged. In 1966, Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan. LaVeyan Satanism isn't about worshipping a literal devil. It's an atheistic philosophy that uses Satan as a symbol of individualism, pride, and rebellion against oppressive dogma. For their primary symbol, they adopted a modified version of Levi's Baphomet. They placed the goat head inside an inverted pentagram, surrounded by Hebrew letters spelling out Leviathan, a mythical sea serpent. This version became known as the Sigil of Baphomet. For the Church of Satan, Baphomet represents the carnal, earthly, and physical aspects of humanity, which they believe should be embraced, not shunned. This cemented Baphomet's modern identity as a key symbol of Satanism, even though its original meaning was quite different. This brings us to today. In recent years, Baphomet has made headlines again, thanks to the Satanic Temple. Not to be confused with the Church of Satan, the Satanic Temple is a political activist and religious organization that also uses satanic imagery to promote their beliefs. They don't worship Satan either. They see Satan as a literary figure representing rebellion against tyranny and a champion of rational inquiry. In 2015, they unveiled a massive 9-foot-tall bronze statue of Baphomet. This statue, which features Baphomet flanked by 2 adoring children, was created as a response to a Ten Commandments monument being placed on the Oklahoma State Capitol grounds. Their argument was one of religious pluralism. If one religion gets a monument on public property, then others should be allowed to as well. The statue caused a huge uproar and eventually had to be moved, but it brought Baphomet roaring back into the public conversation. For the Satanic Temple, Baphomet is a symbol of reason, empathy, bodily autonomy, and the rejection of arbitrary authority. It's a reconciliation of opposites, a symbol that challenges people to reconsider their preconceived notions. So, what is the true story of Baphomet? The answer is that there isn't one single story. Baphomet is a symbol that has been constantly reinterpreted and redefined over centuries. It started as a phantom accusation used to destroy the Knights Templar. It was reborn as a 19th century occult symbol of universal balance and esoteric knowledge. It was then twisted into a boogeyman by conspiracy theorists, adopted as a symbol of carnal individualism by the Church of Satan, and finally, repurposed as a modern icon of rebellion and religious freedom by the Satanic Temple. Baphomet has been a scapegoat, a diagram of the cosmos, a symbol of evil, and a champion for justice. It reflects the fears, philosophies, and rebellions of the eras that have adopted it. It shows how a symbol's meaning is unfixed. It's created and recreated by the people who use it. So the next time you see that goat-headed figure, remember its long, strange journey. It's a story not just about a single image, but about the very nature of belief, power, and symbolism itself. Thanks so much for watching. What do you think about the story of Baphomet? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history and symbolism, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. Belial does not announce his arrival. There is no scream, no fire, no possession marked by convulsions or blasphemy. Belial arrives quietly. He enters a room already tired, a mind already disappointed, a soul already questioning whether anything truly matters, and once he is there, nothing ever feels important again. Of all demons recorded in ancient texts, grimoires and modern demonology, Belial is the most subtle, and perhaps the most dangerous, because Belial does not destroy through chaos, he destroys through emptiness. The name Belial appears in some of the oldest surviving religious texts. In Hebrew tradition, the word itself means worthless, lawless, or without value. Not evil in the dramatic sense, not monstrous, just empty. Early scriptures did not describe Belial as a single being at first. He was an influence, a condition, a presence that followed societal collapse, moral decay, and betrayal. Where Belial was named, corruption followed. Judges accepted bribes, leaders abandoned responsibility, communities rotted from within, and no one resisted. By the time medieval demonologists began cataloging hell, Belial had taken form. He was crowned a king among demons, not because he was powerful, but because he was useful. Belial was said to grant influence, status, and success within corrupt systems. He whispered promises of advancement without effort, authority without responsibility, power without conscience, and those who followed him rarely realized they were damned, because nothing felt wrong. Unlike Lucifer, Belial does not challenge authority. He infects it. He does not rebel against law. He hollows it out until law becomes meaningless. Medieval accounts describe Belial appearing as a refined, noble, well-spoken, charismatic, reasonable. He never demanded worship. He encouraged compromise, just this once, just to get ahead, just until things improve, and they never did. Belial's greatest weapon is apathy. Victims under his influence do not become violent or erratic. They become indifferent. Suffering stops provoking outrage. Injustice becomes expected. Betrayal becomes routine. Demonologists describe Belial as the demon who convinces humanity that resistance is pointless, that nothing will change, that caring is weakness. Possession cases linked to Belial are rare and deeply disturbing. Victims do not scream, they do not thrash, they simply disengage. Loved ones report sudden emotional coldness, absence of empathy, a chilling willingness to harm others if it proves convenient. One exorcist described Belial's presence this way: "It felt like standing in a room where hope had died quietly." Belial thrives in systems, governments, corporations, institutions built on hierarchy and compliance. Wherever people begin to feel like replaceable parts, Belial is already present. Ancient texts warn that Belial does not need belief, he only needs exhaustion. The most terrifying aspect of Belial is that he does not oppose goodness. He renders it irrelevant. Charity becomes performative. Justice becomes selective, truth becomes negotiable, and eventually, evil no longer feels like evil, it feels like policy. The most terrifying aspect of Belial is that he does not oppose goodness, he renders it irrelevant. Charity becomes performative, justice becomes selective, truth becomes negotiable, and eventually, evil no longer feels like evil, it feels like policy. Some demonologists argue that Belial is not a demon of hell, but a parasite of civilization. He emerges when societies grow too large to care about individuals, when rules replace morality, when responsibility is endlessly deferred. Belial does not create tyrants, he creates bureaucrats of suffering. There is an old warning buried in demonological texts: where Belial rules, no one believes themselves guilty, and that is his triumph. When no one feels responsible, no one resists. Belial is not the demon of rage, he is the demon of resignation, the voice that says, "Why bother? It's always been this way. Nothing you do will matter." And once that voice is believed, the soul begins to rot. Belial does not wait in darkness. He waits in offices, in meeting rooms, in systems that reward obedience over conscience. He does not need worshippers. He needs participants. And when the world finally feels empty, when cruelty feels normal, when no one remembers what they were supposed to protect, Belial will already be gone, because his work will be complete. Asmodeus does not come for the innocent, he does not stalk the faithful. He does not announce himself with terror or violence. Asmodeus waits for want, because desire is the only doorway that opens from the inside. Of all the demons whispered about in ancient texts, Asmodeus is the most personal, the most intimate, the most patient. He does not drag souls into hell, he convinces them to walk there willingly, one indulgence at a time. The name Asmodeus appears in some of the oldest surviving demonological records in ancient Jewish texts. He is described as the demon of lust, jealousy, and wrath, a being whose influence ruined marriages, shattered families, and drove men and women into madness. But to reduce Asmodeus to lust alone is a mistake. Lust is merely the beginning. Asmodeus governs obsession the moment desire stops being pleasure and becomes necessity. Early texts describe Asmodeus as unnervingly calm, thoughtful, observant. He studies humans the way a scholar studies insects, not with cruelty, but with fascination. He learns what they crave, what they lack, what emptiness they are trying to fill, and then he waits. The Book of Tobit describes Asmodeus as a destroyer of unions, a demon who murdered 7 husbands before their marriages could be consummated. But even in this ancient tale, Asmodeus is not portrayed as savage, he is portrayed as possessive, jealous not of love, but of attachment. Because love creates bonds, and Asmodeus cannot tolerate bonds he does not control. Asmodeus does not destroy love by force, he poisons it with excess. Desire becomes fixation, passion becomes entitlement, attraction becomes ownership. Over time, affection suffocates itself, and when love finally collapses, Asmodeus remains. Medieval demonologists classified Asmodeus as a prince of hell, not because he ruled territory, but because he ruled behavior. He was said to govern gambling halls, brothels, taverns, and places where restraints slowly eroded, where indulgence was normalized, where self-control felt outdated. Asmodeus does not tempt with new desires. He amplifies existing ones. A drink becomes a necessity, pleasure becomes a routine, routine becomes dependency, and dependency becomes identity. The victim no longer asks why they want something, they only know they must have it. Possession cases linked to Asmodeus are deeply disturbing because victims remain lucid. They know what they are doing, they know it is destroying them, and they cannot stop. Exorcists describe Asmodeus as mocking restraint, laughing at guilt, encouraging indulgence as honesty. Why deny yourself? Why pretend you are better than this? Asmodeus thrives in secrecy. Shame strengthens him. The more hidden the desire, the more powerful it becomes. Victims isolate themselves, lie effortlessly, rationalize endlessly. They become two people, the one the world sees, and the one Asmodeus owns. Unlike other demons, Asmodeus does not promise power or enlightenment. He promises relief. Relief from longing, relief from denial, relief from restraint. And relief is far more seductive than power. Ancient warnings about Asmodeus are brutally consistent. He never leaves first. Relationships collapse. Finances disintegrate. Health deteriorates. And still, the desire remains because Asmodeus does not feed on pleasure. He feeds on loss of control. Some demonologists believe Asmodeus is the most successful demon in history, not because he conquers nations, but because he conquers individuals, quietly, personally, permanently. He does not need belief. He needs vulnerability. Asmodeus is not the demon of pleasure. He is the demon of never enough. The hunger that grows the more it is fed. The craving that survives satisfaction. The desire that outlives consequence. He does not punish indulgence, he rewards it, until nothing else remains. And when the world finally collapses around the victim, Asmodeus will not be there to drag them into hell. He will already be gone, because they will have walked there on their own. Thank you for watching The Dark and Strange.